conversation this morning with Dr. Kenneth Coles from IUP is brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. And Dr. Coles is with us today. He's a professor of geoscience at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, and he's here to tell us all about Leap Day. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you with us here today, and I love the topic.
Well, it's interesting. Every summer and fall, I sit down to think about what public shows we can offer at the IUP Planetarium, and I realized, it's a leap year, and I've never done a show on the astronomical underpinnings of Leap Day.
Yeah. So has that show already happened, or is it yet to come?
No, it's tomorrow night, Friday night, at 7 p.m. in the IUP Planetarium, which is in Wyatt Hall. If you know where the Oak Grove is, Wyatt Hall is the building closest to Oakland Avenue on the east side of the Oak Grove. You just come in, look for the dinosaur skeletons, and that's where the planetarium is.
And that's where their program will be. At what time?
7 p.m.
And it's free.
Yeah, it is free. It's good to come a little bit early. It's a little hard to have people walk in late to a planetarium show because we do darken the ceiling.
Yeah.
It's usually the students at IUP who are the only ones tempted to come in a little bit late.
So a year is 365 days, except when it's not.
Yeah, exactly. The calendars, human societies have nearly always used astronomical cycles as the basis of the calendar. We use the solar year and the solar day in our calendar, and the solar year is not an even multiple. It's not an even number of days. It's about 365 and a quarter, but not exactly. So adjusting has always been complex.
Yeah, and so that's why we have the calendar the way that it is, and why we have to insert a leap day, and February is the natural choice.
Well, who can say? But that's a cultural judgment. You'll have to ask my colleagues in the anthropology department. But you can't do it every 4 years. That was the reform of the Julian calendar about 2,000 years ago, was to include a leap day every 4 years. But that overdoes it just a little bit. The actual solar year is a little bit shorter than 365 and a quarter. So you take it out you don't include a leap day every time the year is divisible by 100, unless it's divisible by 400, in which case you do put one in. So it's
all right, Galileo, you lost me. But it's really, really interesting that societies and cultures can come up with a formula such as that. To not get it exactly right and exactly correct, but that probably is an impossibility, isn't it?
Well, our current system will only get a day off after about 3,000 years, so we don't have to worry about changing the rule. But in a way, the rule is not so complicated. In the year 1900, we did not have a leap day, but in 2000, we did. And we do it every 4 years. Some cultures go much farther. They also base their calendar on the lunar month.
Okay.
And the lunar month is a challenge. The moon's orbit is not circular, it's elliptical. So the length of the lunar month varies a little bit between 29 and 30 days. And there are even cultures that try to keep in sync with both the lunar month and the solar year. And, for example, the calendar followed in the Jewish faith, the Hebrew calendar is a lunar calendar, but a certain number of years they insert a 13th month, to keep in sync with the solar year. It's mathematics.
It's intriguing to me that you're going to put this together in a program to make it fun and interesting for folks tomorrow night. How's the program structured? What happens?
I think what I'd like to do, the planetarium is very good for showing motions in the sky and how things appear to us on Earth. So you can, for example, rotate the sky and show how it moves in one night. You can move the sun through the stars as it would move in a season or a year. And you can show the moon traveling through the stars as well. And it reproduces those motions very accurately. And you get a sense that there are all these things going on in the sky. And when you look at the numbers, if you want to use them to keep track of time, which is a natural tendency, you have to pay close attention.
Geoscience at IUP has to be a really, really fascinating thing to teach, because you're getting young minds that you're really opening up universes to them, aren't you?
Well, it's fun. Also, the way they got me years ago was with the field trips. I was interested. I wanted to major in everything. I was one of those kids. And I was thinking about a number of other majors. I was in California, but then they took us outdoors, and I thought, this is great. So we also try to get outdoors to look up at the sky. And while you may think this is a cloudy place, and it is, you do have a lot of opportunities to view the sky if you don't mind getting up in the middle of the night or before dawn. It's beautiful before dawn right now. We have Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars all up before dawn. So take a look the next time you're taking your trash out.
There you go. Well, I get up at 2:15 every morning. So
there you go.
Not a problem. I can see that with no difficulties at all. But when you do look up in the sky, there's this little thing called Mars up there. It's just a little dot. You might imagine a little bit of a redder glow to it as you're looking up at it. If you're looking at it with a telescope, you probably get a better idea. You actually have come up with a map of Mars.
Yeah,
an atlas, I guess.
An
is
atlas,
the better
yes.
word.
We put together an atlas. I was working with two colleagues, Ken Tanaka at the U.S. Geological Survey, which has made planetary maps since the Apollo missions, and Phil Christensen at Arizona State University. And we put together an atlas. It was a big undertaking. It took several years. And it sort of summarizes some of the general ideas of what we know about Mars and what the current questions are. And there are many questions. Science is always this way. We're more questions than answers. And people are fascinated with it. It's interesting. I serve the taxpayers of Pennsylvania by teaching their children astronomy. That's what I do at IUP. And you would think in a cloudy place like this, maybe that's not important. But the classes fill up. People are fascinated by it. They want to know. And we can teach them how we think about these things.
As you got into the research for this atlas, what were some of the things that maybe even surprised you?
It's interesting. Some of the things we've seen, we got our first good pictures of Mars almost 50 years ago, 1971, the Mariner 9 mission, which was the first spacecraft to orbit another planet. And so we've known for half a century that there are enormous volcanoes on Mars, that the largest valley in the solar system is there, Valles Marineris, which would stretch from San Francisco to New York if it were on Earth and is much deeper than the Grand Canyon. And we don't have a good explanation of how these things happen. Many of the features on Mars are still enigmas.
Do you organize the atlas by chapters or by themes? How is it organized?
Well, there are chapters in the front that explain the geography and geology, and then the heart of the book is a series of maps that systematically cover the entire planet. And it's interesting. There are 1,800 named features. I know because I checked that list about 4 times. And even I have to look in the book to remember where they are. You'd think I'd have them all in my head now, but I don't.
You'd think you'd have 1,800 in your head.
Well, I know the geography. Or if you ask me where certain features are on Earth, often I can remember. We all can, but not yet on Mars.
So how do we get access to this to get a look at it?
Currently, it's in book form, and I think it's also available as an ebook from Cambridge University Press, and it's my intention to make sure that we get a copy over in the Indiana Free Library.
Yeah.
So in the near future, I hope we'll have it over there where you can take a look at it.
And what would you like to see happen once people do get a look at it? What is the aim of a book such as this?
I think one of the things you can do is see what is it we've learned with all that money we've spent sending missions to Mars. It's an endless debate and will always be with us. Should you spend money on these things? That's a question for society to decide, not the scientists. But once you do investigate, you say, well, what have we learned? We've learned a lot of things about Mars, but it's also told us things about Earth and Earth's early history, Earth is such a geologically active planet. We look out the window today, we see it snowing. And so things are always changing here. If you want to know what Earth was like when very early in its existence, going to places like the Moon and Mars tells you a lot about that. And that ultimately can help us with things like finding mineral resources or understanding why they exist where they do.
He is Dr. Kenneth Coles. He's a professor of geoscience at IUP. Thanks for coming in to share with us.
All right. I appreciate sharing. Thank you so much.
7 p.m. tomorrow.
Yes, at the planetarium.
At the planetarium. Folks can go and enjoy a little bit more. That was fun. Thanks. It's 8:21 in the morning. It's the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, AM 1160 and 101.1 FM, 101.1